We got some kicks out of
Did it message itself? July.
Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
There he is. Good evening. This regular meeting of the Township Council is being held in accordance with the schedule of the meetings of the Township Council adopted and established by the Township Council, which schedule designated the time, date, and place of this meeting. Adequate public notice has been provided pursuant to the Open Public Meetings Act. We're using electronic amplifying and recording device in order to obtain a clear and audible record, and we request all those wishing to speak be recognized and state your name and address directly to the microphone. The recording device to be solely utilized by the Township Clerk's Office shall be for the preparation of minutes and shall be the official record of the Township Council meeting. Madam Clerk, ma'am, the roll call, please.
Mr. Hutchison.
Present.
Ms. Grace. Here. Mr. Mignon.
Here.
Mrs. Stubbs.
She is ill.
Mrs. Winters. Here. Mrs. Strato.
She is excused.
Mr. Mercado.
Present.
Mr. Carlemere.
Here.
Mr. Cardis.
Here.
Chief Harkins.
Here.
Mr. Chadwell.
Here. We have Resolution 2203-073's resolution to go into closed session. This is to discuss possible acquisitions for the township properties. I entertain a motion. So moved. Second. On the question. Roll call, please.
Mr. Hutchison.
Yes.
Ms. Grace.
Yes.
Mr. Mignon.
Yes.
Mrs. Winters. Yes. Mr. Mercado.
Yes. The time period should be about 15 minutes or less. Thank you.
hey, how are you? How are you guys? Nothing's free, my friends. I didn't expect it. I already John was there. Want to say it again? Yeah, all right. That's good. Yes. We tried. Lucky him. Lucky him.
I get all kinds of names. Bonzi.
Yeah. We have others. We'll share them with you. There is no. It is. No, not for us. This is I'm just saying. We get like some updates. He's talking about.
Here. Clerk, can I have a roll call again, please?
Mr. Hutchison?
Present.
Mrs. Grace? Here. Mr. Mignon?
Here.
Mrs. Winters? Yes. Mr. Mercado?
Present. It is still Mr. Carlmer still provided us information about possible acquisition of property. That is still being discussed, and we'll have an update. Thank you. We'll now open up our first public portion. This is for agenda items only. Anyone addressing council may speak one time. Once all those wishing to address council have had their turn, they may address council a second time. Each speaker is allocated 3 minutes with a maximum of 15 minutes for the public portion, first public portion. Mr. Heimbaugh, I saw your hand.
Pete Heimbaum, Morningstar Court. Good evening.
Good morning. Good evening. I'm sorry.
Yeah, Morningstar Court, evening of the day.
Yeah.
It's a little
Thank
confusing. I guess, is this the bank property being discussed? Or
We cannot discuss
Okay.
that.
I have one agenda item question. It's for resolution 79 and 80. This procedure that's being used to appoint these consultants, counsel. I've never seen that wording before for an appointee. Could you explain what's being done?
For the tax.
Correct.
Special counsel.
Township went out, advertised for professional services for special tax appeals. There were two firms that responded, the firm, that Marmera firm and the Scafidi firm. The bids came in appropriately. In discussing it with administration, the concept was they anticipate there could be several special tax appeals filed. And both these firms are very competent firms. They do a lot of that, but they're not large firms. So the thought was perhaps we should award to both, to the administration and the mayor and Tom. And that was their consensus. So the both bids are adjusted to be the same per hour price, so they're equal in bid and services. The firms are equal in size and competence. So the administration is just going to use these two firms to alternate special tax appeals.
Okay.
That's why there's two firms being awarded.
Okay, thank you. My question, though, thank you for that, but my question really was on the procedure that's being followed for this appointment. I've never seen that wording being used for an appointment. I mean, we've seen appointments being made during the reorg meeting and things like that, but this one looks like we're following a different part of the structure, the mayor council.
Those are mayoral appointments, and during the reorg, it is on the advice and consent of council. So I guess Mr. Parliament it's time to put a resolution of consent, because this is the normal process we follow in January. It's just taking place 2 months later, appointing these two firms.
Okay, that's all. Thank you.
Is there anyone else? Mr. Paul Durham.
Good evening, Council. Ray Polidor from the Historic Village of Ariel.
Good evening.
Also on that resolution of consent, the wording says that the mayor has, after consultation with members of council, appointed the following. When was the consultation with council?
That's the appointment. That's word that he's used for resolutions. We received this information prior to our council meeting on Thursday. I approved the agenda. Each council member had this on Thursday afternoon. If they have any questions, they can contact the mayor or the business administrator.
Okay, so with the wording as you have it, that you'll be voting on shortly, it says after consultation with members. Would that be inappropriate? Because otherwise it would seem to me that it would violate sunshine. The wording is consultation.
What was done, the standard resolution format was used to make this appointment once both firms agreed that the prices would be the same.
Could you speak up a little bit, please, into the microphone?
When both firms conveyed their opinion or response that both prices would be the same per hour, they're comparable in size. The form resolution was approved. I go through for submission. I think it's appropriate. I don't see any issue with the wording of the resolution. What's important is that the governing body all agrees and consents and approves the appointment.
And you're okay with the language moving forward to vote on it as it stands?
Mr. President, may I weigh in on all of the bring up?
Well, let Mr. Carlmer respond to that.
I'm sorry,
You're okay with the language that's there?
I'm okay with the language.
I'm comfortable with the language. Mr.
Okay.
Hutchison?
My concern with the language is that I would not want someone to think that we did violate the sunshine law. I know that the language is what we might call boilerplate. Maybe I'm wrong on that reference, but is there a way that we could change it so that it speaks that it is not a violation of the sunshine?
Well, for purpose of reading the resolution, you'd have to amend to an adjustment of my motion to this 079 to amend the language. I think you can indicate that and whereas the appointments have been made through public advertising for bids, professional services have come in appropriately, and it goes into our firm, and then the approval, and then it goes into the fee firm. You can move that the clerk just amends that second whereas to indicate that it was professional services with an open process of bidding, and both firms seem to be acceptable.
I'd like to make that motion, but I would not like to recite the exact words you said because I can't remember them. But I understand the gist of what you're saying. Could we do that, Mr. President?
You can make a motion. I do have a question before that. Mr. Carlmer, is this the same language that we use at reappointment in January? Because it looks very familiar to me.
My
That for
sense
17
is-
years, it's seen the same language.
My sense is that it's basically what is used for the reorganization.
And I would
So,
just-
Mr. Hutchison, if you want to make that motion, you're more than welcome to do that.
With regard to making the motion, sometimes when, I don't like to recreate a wheel or reinvent the wheel, but sometimes when somebody brings something to our attention, if we can look at it and say it does make sense to do it, I'd like to improve what we do. So I'd like to make the motion, utilizing the language that the solicitor just said, so as to make clear that we are not violating the sunshine.
Is that a motion?
Yes.
Is there a second? Is there a second?
I have a question. So we made the motion, would that change the language next time, or are we keeping the same?
I think it would just be for this, the resolution, 79 and 80.
And just, if you're correct, it would just be 79 and 80, it would basically read as the appointments are being made pursuant to public advertising for professional services.
Is there a second?
I can say that.
On the question? Roll call to amend. We can do the agenda. Okay, we'll do that later. So we'll have that motion. Can I hold off on that motion? And second? Okay. Is there anything else, Mr. Pollard?
Yes. Now, the question on Marmara law, does counsel and/or solicitor find any issues of conflict with Marmara regarding their relationship with the mayor being a former member of that organization, that law firm? You find in no way, shape, or form any conflicts?
Well, that former association goes back prior to the mayor running and being appointed mayor for the first time, so that goes back many years. He does not have affiliations with that Marmara law firm. And I don't believe the Marmara law firm as it exists today is the same makeup as the firm existed when the mayor was there. So I don't see any conflict. And it was open public solicitation.
And my last question on Marmara, are any of the members of the Marmara law firm associated with Blue Sky? It's already doing business with the township.
That's my knowledge.
My knowledge. Is there something you have to,
Is that something you want to check on before you move
is
forward?
that something you want to provide me, Ray?
No, just want to see what you know.
Okay, well, I'm asking what you know.
It's best if you guys do your homework. As I come here to ask you those questions, you do your homework, you have the answer for me.
Okay, all right, okay, we're doing that. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone else? Ms. Hendry?
Good evening. I have a couple questions about the cannabis locations. We have 3 going into Gloucester Township, which in my mind seems a little excessive, but the one that's going to go in between the Wawa and the Hojo, wouldn't you think that's not an ideal location, being that hotel is known for having a high drug activity already?
Yeah.
So right now, the resolutions that are being presented are the state procedure when someone makes an application.
Uh-huh.
So just for members of the public and yourself, when someone makes an application or desires to have a cannabis business, whether it's retail, wholesale, distribution, whatever the 5 categories are that the state has legislatively agreed to license, their application must be accompanied by a resolution of support. So that the state knows that the municipality has zoning-wise appropriated certain areas for certain type of licensing. And they ask the municipalities to give resolutions of support. Procedurally, in the township, between my office, the clerk, and the members of the administration, we've come up with a questionnaire so far that we're handling when these licenses individuals are requesting. They have to show proof that they have a registered business with the state of New Jersey. They have to show proof that they have contracts for the property, that they're not speculating, that they have an area that meets the zoning. So the first thing they do is they contact the zoning officer to see that the location they want to go into has the appropriate zoning. And the zoning officer has sent letters to the 3 of these that their type of operation, the new ordinance that we have that permits it, it is a permitted use in that zone. So when we see all those things fall into place and that they're financially responsible, whether they have other businesses in town, so that we're aware of them, the governing body, at least we support the resolution to give to the governing body for support. They've met all those requirements. They first have to get their license by the state of New Jersey. Now, once they go to the location, the way our resolution reads, that we support it subject to any site-specific restrictions and limitations that might be imposed because of their location. So that we don't investigate the location. So if there's something that prohibits it, because the way our ordinance reads, it can't be within 200 feet of each other, same type businesses. So first come, and if there's any other site-specific, they have to meet those requirements.
So you couldn't say no to them if they bought the land or at least the property. You can't say no.
Well, we say we're only giving a resolution of support. Our resolution of support.
So your support. So is that meaning that you're supporting where it's located?
We're supporting them making their application. And our resolution of support says that they have to meet the site-specific requirements. When they go in for their building, and there's site specifics as far as parking area, street lighting, go before the planning board, what have you, they have to meet site-specific requirements. So if there's any prohibition close to a building, a residence, or whatever, that would knock them out of the box, they won't get the site approval. So we say our resolution is support, but we can't examine every zoning area. But we're only saying that they can make their application and that area is permitted. Whatever site-specific restrictions and limitations there are, they have to meet those site-specific requirements.
So we're okay with having 3 cannabis locations in Gloucester Township
They meet the
with a possibility of more, because this is just the beginning.
They meet the zoning requirements. The area they want to be in for their particular type of operation is permitted in that area.
Okay, so my next question would be then, if we have 3 locations with cannabis and possibly more, what are we doing as a township to educate our children? Because I understand it's the parents' responsibility, just say no to drugs, but we don't have Nancy Reagan anymore or DARE or anything like that. So what is the township going to do to help educate these children to say, this is not cool. Like, this is not the way to go. Like, you have to be an adult if you want to smoke weed.
Well, I think, Ms. Hendry, with your involvement at Hughes Elementary School, you're aware there is a robust weed program
But that's only in 5th grade.
May I finish?
But that's only in fifth grade.
Ms. Hendrick, may I finish?
No, I'm
No.
asking you.
Ms. Hendrick.
I'm asking
Ms.
you,
Hendrick,
don't, stop.
Ms.
I'm
Hendrick,
asking you, what are you gonna do?
Ms. Hendrick, this is how it works here. You ask me a question and I respond to it. And I'm trying to respond to you, but you're cutting me off.
Well, I wasn't finished with my question. I have a comma. What are you gonna do, comma?
Ms. Hendrick, you've been here before. You know how this works.
Correct.
So you're going to let me finish.
Go for it.
So we have a robust lead program that's run through our police department that starts at fifth grade and goes into our middle school program. Okay? Chief, can you add to that?
Yeah, the LEAD program goes from fifth grade. There's also a seventh grade program. We have SAGs in the school that interact with the school resource officers regularly, and we evaluate to do the best that we can to work with the schools on substance abuse programs.
And that also includes alcohol as well.
Absolutely, and cigarettes, tobacco, gang affiliation, bullying, it's all part of the LEAD program.
Thank you.
But can we do this earlier? Fifth grade is way too late.
So, I'm sorry, Mr. President. I neglected. So it used to be called the Society Improvement Program, SIP program. That's geared. It's not tied together to a national program like LEAD or DARE. But the officers start interacting regularly. I used to do it at Chew School, as a matter of fact. We start with the kindergarten age, and it's really to introduce them to police and then strangers. So it does start to get introduced at the lower levels. It just doesn't have the name LEAD, but the LEAD officers are the instructors. We have 2 full-time LEAD officers that hit every school in the county.
So is there any plan to enforce or extend the program, being that we have now legal cannabis in our township?
That's a question that you have to pose to the Board of Education, Gloucester Township Board of Education.
I will too. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That ends our first public portion. Bid report,
2022 Special Tax Appeal Council.
I entertain a motion.
So moved.
Is there a second? On the question, roll call, please.
Mr. Hutchison,
Yes.
Ms. Grace, Mr. Mignon,
Yes.
Mrs. Winters, Mr. Mercado.
Yes. Ordinance, there's a first reading, it's introduction. There will be a public hearing at the second reading. Ordinance 0-22-03, ordinance adopting a updated affordable housing trust fund spending plan for the Township of Gloucester. This is a update of our affordable housing trust fund, where it includes a plan to project our revenues, the description of our administrative mechanism, description of anticipated use of affordable housing trust funds, a schedule for expenditures, a pro forma statement. So it's updating the plan. I entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second, on the question, roll call, please.
Mr. Hutchison,
Yes.
Ms. Grace. Mr. Mignon,
Yes.
Mrs. Winters, Mr. Mercado.
Yes. Next is ordinance 0-22-02. It's a bond, there will be a public hearing. It's a bond ordinance authorizing the completion of various capital improvements and the acquisition of various pieces of capital equipment in and for the Township of Gloucester, County of Camden, New Jersey, appropriating the sum of $9,207,922. Therefore, authorizing the issuance of general obligation bonds or bond anticipation notes of the Township of Gloucester, County of Camden, New Jersey, in the aggregate principal amount of up to $8,747,526, making certain determinations and covenants and authorizing certain related actions in connections with the foregoing. This is for various capital improvement projects, reconstruction, repaving of various sidewalks and curbs throughout the township, repaving of various streets, various drainage improvements, improvements to our recreational buildings and facilities, acquisition, installation of street lighting and traffic signals, acquisition of heavy equipment for public works and also the MUA, acquisition of real property for the public works, undertaking downtown Blackwood revitalization, various equipment and recreation activities, and acquisition of various equipment for the police department. We'll now open up the public hearing. Mr. Krug.
Evening, Council. Paul Krug, Blackwood Estates.
Good evening.
With regards to this ordinance, you're presented with a very unique opportunity this evening. An opportunity that you rarely see out of government, which is an opportunity to return tax dollars to the citizens. $3.2 million in federal COVID relief funds, our money, us collectively, last year. Another 3.2 million this year, $6.4 million, which could be earmarked to pay for these capital improvements and significantly write down how much you're indenturing us to in the future. Can I ask if there would be support from council behind that?
I will not support that.
May I ask why?
These items here can be bonded out over an extended period of time. They're not going to be used. The useful life of all of these things is not in year one. I'm not suggesting that we can't use those COVID monies in next year's budget or this year's budget. I'm simply saying I'm not willing to use those COVID relief funds on a useful life of something that might be lasting 18 years.
I think the depreciation could happen accounting wise over that time frame.
I'm not saying I don't want to use the COVID funds in the budget.
Okay. Do you have a plan for the COVID funds already, the 3.2 million we have in the coffers for this year's budget?
My hope is that they're going to be included in this year's budget.
Well, we're back to that word that my father taught me. Hope is not a strategy.
But we do have to respect the fact that the administration has to give us a budget. When they give that to me, then I will look at it and I will express my desire for that. Hopefully
I guess the point I'll bring up is we know that 3.2 and this year's 3.2 can be used for infrastructure improvements. I'm concerned about what it can be used for in the general budget. We know that it can be used right now.
I've given you my position on it. I have, well, I want to always answer your questions. That's my answer.
Anyone else?
I anticipate, I haven't seen the budget, it has been presented to council or myself, but I would anticipate some of that money that came from the federal government will be used to replace some of the lost revenue we've had over the last year or two. That's all I have.
Okay. The impact to this township from a revenue perspective was minuscule, if any. And the Center for Financial Budgets, which is a federal think tank, just came out with an article that the state and local coffers are doing better than ever before. So I'd like to put that in front of you. What's going to happen tonight is this ordinance will pass, as it always does, but you are indenturing us to the future. You continue to pile on additional debts onto the back of Gloucester Township citizens with an ultimatum. What happens when we take on too much debt as individuals? The credit card company, the car financing company, the mortgage company comes and takes what's the asset that you owe on. You do the same thing. When you put too much debt on these citizens and they can't pay, you will put a lien on their home, and then you will expedite their home going on to auction.com. You voted on it in the past to do the expedited version of that program. And then that home will be taken away from a Gloucester Township citizen. That's what's happening this evening. And there's a very unique opportunity in front of you to change that. I'd very much suggest that you take it. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Mr. Heinball?
behind Ball Morningstar Court. I have a different issue to address with the borrowing. And Mr. Mercado, I sent you an email in advance related to this. I don't know if you're able to read it.
I did not see this morning. I had some issues with.
Because it is a
this
little-
afternoon.
Uh,
Oh, your GT Access email?
No,
Oh,
it's an
okay.
email about capital surplus. So I think we've done some, it's when it comes to these bond ordinances and the borrowing, we've done some suboptimal, to phrase it that way, cash management in recent years. 5 out of the last 9 years in our township's budget, in the budget, we recognize what's termed a capital surplus. That means we borrowed too much, had leftover money in the capital fund, and took it into the regular budget to pay current expenses like electricity bills and things like that. We've done that 5 out of the last 9 years, so it wasn't just a single misstep, it's a pattern. So what can we do this time around to manage the borrowing and manage the cash better? And I do have a suggestion. I think council should demand more accountability from the administration when it comes to the borrowing, where we get updates on what capital is being spent, a projection of what capital spending is going to occur, and when the borrowing is going to occur, so we don't overborrow and overfund the capital fund. We've done it. It's a pattern we've been doing in this township in recent years. And I mean, the worst thing to do is borrowing money has a cost to it. It's interest and consultant fees and commissions and things like that from our financial analysts and things like that, consultants. There's a fee to this. It's expensive, so we shouldn't overborrow. We should do whatever we can, whatever we can do to borrow just what we need for these capital spending. And we've demonstrated a pattern 5 out of the last 9 years where we've overborrowed and had extra borrowed money to pay current expenses in the budget. That's poor cash management. And as recently as 2021, we took $3 million from the capital fund into the budget as capital surplus. That's a big number. But then a few months later, we had one of these, a bond ordinance like we're having today, and borrowed more money. So why would, something's not adding up, something not being done properly. And I think council needs to hold the administration accountable to do it better. Is there any comment to that? Let me ask a different way. Is there a way we could, how do we go about, like in 2021, we had a bond ordinance and borrowed money for capital spending. How was that money borrowed in 2021?
How was it borrowed?
Yeah.
The issuance of bonds?
All in 2021?
No, it was issued prior to 2021. I don't have the exact year that it was issued, but it would have encompassed, I would think, at least a minimum of 4 budget cycles, capital budget.
How is this bond, how's this capital project budget going to be funded this year?
This will also be funded by bonds.
You want to do it a single, immediately?
No. I believe there are, including this, I believe there are total two issuances that have not been fully funded, that have not been capitalized.
So we have notes we're using.
That is correct.
And how are these notes?
These we can issue notes on.
And how will those be issued? The note.
Yeah, we obtain quotes.
And borrow the whole 9 million roughly at one shot at one time?
Yes.
And then we're not going to spend this $9 million in these capital projects. Some of it in a few months, some of it 6 months, some 12 months, some 24 months.
I discussed this before the
Yeah.
last council meeting. Even with an issuance of notes, you have your professionals involved. There are costs associated with the issuances of those notes. So to just sporadically or periodically issue notes does not make sense because you're going to be paying all these professionals each and every time you go out for competitive bids.
Well, how can we address this pattern though of 5 out of the last 9 years having excess money in this capital fund where we've taken it into the
Just
budget?
a point, I know Council President didn't mention it, but the state of New Jersey Division of Local Government Services put in writing a recommendation in which they use the word strongly, recommend that the governing bodies review all of their capital for cancellation of anything that has not been spent. And I can provide you with that documentation.
No, I believe that, but you had that leftover money because you borrowed more than you needed, or earlier than you needed and more than you needed. I mean, this is a pattern. This is 5 out of 9 years. We borrowed more than we've needed. It's like,
Had that money because early on is when that recommendation, that strongly recommendation
got
came from the state.
so
Can you answer this question? If a project comes in under budget, what happens to the money?
It's not spent.
Okay, then what happens?
We could either cancel it or we could use it for it would have to be a similar type project. If it's a road, it would have to be a road. Or you would have to, let me finish, you would have to amend, you'd have to amend the ordinance to move the money to a different section of the ordinance. Say, for example, if you wanted to move curbing the streets or, for example, wanted to buy a vehicle, a truck, a 7-yard dump truck, you would have to amend the ordinance to move it from streets to vehicles.
So we have an option, if I understand it right, if we don't utilize all that's been borrowed for a particular project. For instance, I think we have some big ones here. If it comes under budget, we can either let it sit in there, amend an ordinance or something so as to use it for something else, or we can simply cancel it.
Correct.
And then we'll have a situation where Pete is complaining that we're over borrowing.
Correct.
Okay, good, thank you.
Pete isn't complaining we're over borrowing. I mean, 5 out of the last 9 years,
I understand.
5 out of the last 9 years, we've taken borrowed money to pay current expenses. That's a pattern. It needs to be corrected, addressed and corrected. And
I want to borrow your crystal ball.
5 out of 9 years. No, one-off misstep, that can happen. This is 5 out of 9 years.
No, I don't think so. I think you're going to borrow money for you. You're going to get bids, okay? And then I think your professionals will hold the contractors' feet to the fire and make sure the job is done correctly, and hopefully it comes in under.
So now we've had all this year's experience. It's a pattern now.
Okay,
So why can't we
I got you.
improve our cash management and our borrowing so we don't over borrow and use borrowed money to pay current bills in the budget? That's in my professional financial management career in the private sector, I've been fired for over borrowing to the levels that we're doing here. It's suboptimal cash management and costly and not good for the town. So we're not going to work on improving that.
We can always work on improving everything.
Well, we have a pattern now. We have a pattern. We have evidence and patterns, and so let's work on it. Let's be accountable. Let's not over borrow. That's not a good pattern. Over borrowing. Agree?
I understand what you're saying.
Okay, I'm done complaining, Mr. Ashton. Thank you.
Is there anyone else? Ms. Smithman?
Good evening, Council. My name is Shaughnessy Smithman. I live in Millbridge Gardens Apartments on Millbrook Court, apartment 341. I've been a resident in Gloucester Township, zip code Clementon, since February 2015. I apologize, I came in a little after the meeting began. I did not realize it was daylight savings. In fairness, there are 2 states, Hawaii and Arizona, that do not recognize daylight savings time. While I have never resided in either of those states except for being born in Honolulu, my apologies. I hear that there's a budget. Several things are going on. One is for improvements. If I could bring up once again with the Township of Gloucester, something that I've noticed as being a lifelong resident of the state of New Jersey. Municipalities are not really put on main roads. They're not put in places that are accessible to everything or everyone. With that budget, would it be possible to include a request that I've made several meetings to possibly put on every street sign post? Every residence will have a street sign available, and also near any available water or any location someone would go to get food if they're homeless. If you could put in those locations the address to the municipality for the local police, non-emergency, also for the district that the fire department would serve. If you could put the address at wheelchair height, that should please both wheelchair accessibility and people of shorter stature. If you could put it in raised or recessed writing, so that if they cannot write the language, that they could simply place their postcard or envelope against the plaque located on the street sign post, and using a pencil, a crayon, or even a green leaf, they could get the address written. If it could also include a picture, one so that you can identify the address of the local police, and one as a picture to identify the address for the local fire department. If you could also put it in Braille, people that are blind will know where the signs are. If it's a sign within the Township of Gloucester Township, they should be able to access it, read it in Braille, and recognize that that's the address where they can mail a letter. I'm asking this request because there are some things that occur in townships. There's many things. One is marijuana use. You are approving and supporting marijuana use, growth, distribution, and locations. You do not have a place to bring a stillborn child. Stillborn children can happen to anyone. Of course, you would have to have intercourse of some kind, most of the time, depending on your belief system. You would need a place to bring it, should one occur. I've been told several times that you call the police. My phone stopped working for no reason, and I pay the phone bill. I've had the same cellular phone since approximately the year 2001, and the phone just stopped working. That's why I did not know what time it was. I did not realize it was daylight savings. I had a professional career with a living wage. I was born in Honolulu, but raised in the state of New Jersey. I didn't have a phone. It could have been for something more serious. But even if it was to occur, and you were to call the police, if a stillborn child were to unexpectedly be presented to anyone, what would you like the police to do with it? Where do they bring it? You have a place now to distribute marijuana? A stillborn child would not be considered identifiable to the government. It does not have identification if it was born dead. There would be no place to put it. It does not have identification. We all know, I know that it's a child. I cannot speak for other people's belief, but I believe that it's a person, but it's not identifiable. All the means to bury it properly, if that's your belief system, are barricaded by the government. And you're asking the police to decide what to do. If you're going to ask them to decide what to do, at what stage of gestation would they have to make that judgment call? When it appears to be the form of a child? You're
Ms.
asking.
Smith, can I interrupt you for a second?
Go ahead.
Can you bring it back to the discussion of the capital budget? So this is something that you would like to include in the capital budget.
That's correct. Well,
So these items, okay, the addresses of the police station and fire districts have braille on the side of signs, a watering hole, to identify a watering hole, and to.
No, sir.
Excuse me,
No, no.
let me finish.
You're
Please
incorrect,
let
though.
me finish.
What are you saying, watering hole? I said wherever there's water or food
At the last meeting,
distributed.
you talked about a water hole, so
I asked where the town water was.
No, you asked for a watering hole.
No, I asked where it was.
Okay, Ms. Smithman. Okay, so I'm speaking for myself, not for my colleagues. These requests, they're not going to be included in the capital budget. We have talked about this at length at previous meetings. Some of these things are out of the parameters of what local municipal government does. So these things, asking for things on the sides of fire hydrants or on mailboxes, that's not something that we're going to provide.
You're asking the local police and the local fire department to make a decision. You're asking them to be called in the event of a non-emergency. And
the
what would you like for them?
And the dispatcher will send you over to the main number. We discussed that previously.
Ms. Smithman, I'm not going to vote in support of that either. Okay?
You're not going to?
You can come up here every single meeting, and you can do this every single meeting.
What is this?
Stand up there for 10 minutes, okay? You can do it for 10 minutes every single meeting. I'm not going to vote for it, okay?
You're not going to vote to put the
Yes.
address
Correct.
for the local police and the local fire department anywhere?
I want to be absolutely 100% clear with you. No.
Is there a town phone? Previously,
You can continue to.
Previously, fire alarms used to be located on the outside of buildings. So if there was a fire, you could pull you could
Still no.
you could close the switch and the alarm would go off. They were located outside the buildings.
Is there anything else you want to add, Ms. Smithman, regarding the capital budget?
But how are you supposed to contact the local police or the local fire department? I'm not suggesting, I don't think anything unreasonable.
911.
Not everyone
Don't
has
have
a phone.
I'm sure someone will have a phone. If I had a show of hands here who had a phone, I would imagine that 99% of the people have a phone here that can call 911 for an individual.
What if
Is
it's
there
for,
anything else, Ms. Smithman, that you want to add about this budget?
so you're
If you
gonna,
have additional comments, you can provide at the second public portion. But this is about the capital budget. And myself, Mr. Hutchinson, I don't know if anyone else wants to speak about it. The things that you brought up are not included in our capital budget.
the capital budget should include the address of both the local police and the local fire department. While you are speaking of improving the community, you can change out every street sign and put the address on the street posts. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Mr. Sweet?
Good evening, Council. Sam Sweet from Ariel.
David.
A couple things were said, and I just wanted some clarification, I guess from Mr. Cardis. When you cancel debt, like if we borrow 9 million, just to make it simple, if we borrow 9 million, spend 6, and then there's 3 million to be canceled, how does that work? I mean, I know you're canceling it, but we've already borrowed the 9 million. Are we sending that 3 million that you're canceling back to the bank?
You anticipate it as a revenue line item in the subsequent budget. And therefore, it's considered to be offsetting debt service.
But you've borrowed the money.
You asked me, I'm telling you the
I
procedure.
understand that.
This is the procedure that the state of New Jersey Division of Local Government Services, which I would advise you to reach out to them if you have concerns about the methodology of how they do that. But that is how they prescribe that, and any auditor will tell you that that's exactly how you do it.
Okay, but if we borrow the money, then we end up bonding it after 4 periods, then we're paying interest on that money. When we put the money into revenue, we're not paying any interest on it.
You cannot pay the bondholders back their money. They have these bonds. These bonds are issued. They're issued in you know this already, $5,000 increments. They have those as investments. They have a maturity schedule. They must follow that maturity schedule at that interest rate. Again, you know this.
Okay, yes, but
I'm not telling you something you don't know, Sam.
I understand that, but some people don't understand the process. But my other question with that is, you don't bond until 5 years. You actually have a bond anticipatory note, and it's usually an interest only. So you can, yes.
Disagree.
Now,
Disagree.
would you like to
can
go
bond
over it?
You can bond after 6 months. You can
Well, no, I
bond
didn't say
after
you
1
can't
year.
bond, but traditionally Gloucester Township has not bonded.
Traditionally, when we're talking about this, there's exact or not exact. You said.
The last-
Can I finish, please? You
Mhm.
said you do this. I'm saying you don't do this. You can permanently finance at any point in time once this bond has been adopted. Once the bond ordinance is adopted, it authorizes myself to go out and take out notes. We can permanently finance at any point, months, years, weeks for that matter. But it will probably be impossible to do it in weeks. You could do it after 3 years, after 2 years, after 4 years, after 5 years. It depends how long you can go with those. Some townships choose not to permanently finance at all. They'll pass a bond ordinance and they'll do notes for 10 years. After 3 years, you have to start paying principal down. You cannot just continue to take notes all the way out for 10 years. That's local bond law.
Okay, so if we have a note and we over borrowed, or as you said, with 3 million, we want to cancel it, could we not send that 3 million to the bank to cancel the debt instead of taking it into income and then bonding it 4 years later, like history has done? Because that's what Gloucester Township has done. Every year, you guys pass this bond ordinance or borrow ordinance or whatever you want to call it, and then you take out bond anticipatory notes. And then on the 4th year, you bond it. You wrap up the last 4 years of notes. 35 million was, I believe, the last bond ordinance that we did. And then, so if you're over borrowing, you're taking that money into income, but you're still bonding it and you're still paying interest on it. So if you haven't bonded the note, all the notes yet, and you still have a note outstanding and you've over borrowed, you can take that money and apply it to the note because, as you said, you can't pay back permanent financing, but you can pay back the bond anticipatory note. Correct?
You can borrow based on whatever amount you want with the note. You don't have, if the note matures and it's $100,000 note and you feel that you only need to bond $80,000, that's what you would bond. You make that decision. The governing body makes that decision as to how much they're going to permanently finance based on a number of notes or one note or 2 notes or 10 notes or 20 notes. Whatever amount of the original note once it matures, because that note has to mature because you took that note out with a financial institution and you have a deal and an obligation to make your payment when it matures, unless there's an early call on it, and typically there's not. At that point, when that matures, you make the decision. How much am I going to permanently finance? And I heard Dan say 18 years. It's typically 11, 12 years. I've seen some of them as little as 10. I've seen some of them as much as 13 years. It depends on what you want to do with those notes. You can pay down those notes. You don't have to borrow $100,000 if that was the original note, and now you only need 7. That's your choice.
Okay, so to answer my question, in this scenario, in our little scenario here, if we're borrowing 9 million in a 1-year note, interest only, we only use 6 million, and we're left over with 3 million, you can send that 3 million back to the bank if it's in a note form. Instead of recognizing that as income, you can send it back and pay down that debt. So therefore, in 3 years, you don't have to bond that note, bond the extra 9 million.
I'm having trouble following this. I got to be honest.
Well, if we're using the notes, when are we?
Notes become bonds.
I know, but before that, we're passing this ordinance right here, which says that we can borrow for these amounts.
Correct. It's authorizing us.
We're going to utilize notes initially. When we do this.
Correct.
When do you make the decision to borrow with the note?
We went
When do you make the decision
to bar the
to
note.
borrow on the note?
That's
to the project?
arbitrary.
So you're
When
not
you
doing it
feel
until
that
you're ready to do the job.
when you feel that you need to do the job, when you
So-
feel you need to make the payments on the work.
So when you know that you're going to do the road project, you borrow under the note. And how long does the road project take, give or take?
Months.
Months. You come in under budget, right? On a particular project.
That you would not need to permanently finance the amount that you have access on.
Okay.
It varies. It doesn't, it's not, it's up to, that's why the bond ordinance says you can borrow up to this amount.
Anything else, Mr. Sweet?
Yes, I have a lot. That still didn't answer my question though. Okay, because you guys have been borrowing these amounts in notes. We know that you pay interest on them for 3 to 4 years. Again, I'm gonna ask the question. All right, if we borrow $9 million tonight, just rounding up, and then in December, we spend $6 million of that 9 million. We've now overborrowed 6 million. I'm not just making up these numbers.
We're not borrowing.
Okay, you're borrowing this.
No, we're not.
And you only issue a note for 1 year, maximum.
Okay, and then
Authorized.
you're authorizing it, and then Mr. Cardis is going to turn around and borrow $9 million at some point this year.
When they're ready to do the job. But they're not borrowing it tonight.
That's not
This is just
necessarily true. I don't
authorization
need to
tonight.
borrow the entire amount. I could borrow some amount less than that.
But we never have, and the best indicator of future events is past. So you guys have never done
I
this.
couldn't sit here and tell you what's happened all throughout the
Mr. Cardis, we know what we've done. We've gone through this. As you say to me several times, I know this, so do you. You guys sit here, borrow the money, there'll be a bond anticipatory
Can
note.
I tell you that we borrowed a note for the full amount of a bond ordinance? I cannot tell you that in every instance.
Of course you can't, because it's been done every year. And then you wrap it up in 5 years in one large bond, permanent financing, and then you pay that bond off over 10 years. And to go to Mr. Krug's point, you're indenturing our children, our grandchildren, or even all of you to pay down debt that could be avoided.
Typically over 11 years.
But you could avoid the debt by paying the note early if we're over borrowing, which traditionally you guys have done.
If it's over borrowed, it goes right into the budget with the next year or the following year.
Yeah, you cannot pay the bond holder.
I'm not saying the bond, that right now it's not a bond. You have a bond anticipatory note for last year's amount, budgeted amount. Last year's amount, which was 7.2 million, you have a bond anticipatory note on the books. Therefore, if you over borrowed for that, if you only use 5 million of it, you have 2.2 million left. I'm making these numbers up. You could take that 2.2 million and pay the debt down instead of recognizing it as income.
We have to pay the note down every year.
It's interest only, but you could pay the entire note down and not bond it.
The most you can go is 1 year without rolling it over.
Yeah, and then you guys roll it over and we pay interest only again. And you carry 4 to 5 years of bond anticipatory notes. And then once you get to that point where you could no longer do that by the state of New Jersey, you bond the entire note. And you've not paid any of the debt down for 5 years.
I do not recall going 5 years with a note.
If council will allow me, the next one, I'll bring a slideshow presentation and sit here if I can have more than 5 minutes on the next public portion, because that's been done.
I'd be glad to look at anything where you can show me that an original bond ordinance was passed and a note was rolled over for a 5-year period.
Yeah.
Every single year.
You two can sit down and go over that, okay?
So regarding the, Mr. Mercado, you had said something about, with the capital budget, Mr. Kruger brought up using the money from COVID to use to pay off some of this. And I know Mr. Hutchinson's point, but you said that you hope that the money is used to offset the loss of revenue. Gloucester Township, from what we can see, didn't lose revenue in the aggregate. Certain areas lost revenue, but others gained revenue. So in the aggregate, Gloucester Township didn't lose any revenue.
I believe that the administration should utilize beyond just the loss of revenue. If we're permitted to do so, I have all the faith that they'll do that. Okay?
That's one of us.
No, I do.
I know, that's one of us.
That's fine.
All right, but not only is it used to offset the cost of revenue, it's also used to protect wages, keep your workers employed, and also used for infrastructure. The capital budget is infrastructure. So why aren't we using at least a portion of it? Maybe not all of it, being all of it is greedy.
I would like to see that it's used, maybe over a period of time, maybe 1, 2, or 3 budgets. I think that's appropriate. And I don't think it's fair to say that it's not going to be utilized. Just because we don't have an answer tonight, that's not unusual.
I didn't say it wasn't going to be utilized. I just said that we would like to be utilized to pay off debt, because as we all know, carrying debt is not a good thing unless you're, a professional real estate holder.
But I've already addressed how I think if you've got a useful life for these particular items as we see in the capital budget, I think that these items should be dealt with as they're being dealt with. On a separate issue with regard to the monies, the COVID monies, I think that should go into the budget as the amount to be reduced, to reduce the amount to be raised by taxation. That's how I think it should go.
But the capital budget also increases our taxes because now we're borrowing. And we've had this discussion several times. I understand that. I'm just saying, you're saying to put the money into that budget, okay, which is a one-time shot, as opposed to reducing the amount that we're borrowing, which we're going to borrow for 10 to 12 years. To me, I'd rather see it in here so we're not spending money 10 to 12 years later.
And that's how I would do my own budget, as you're suggesting. But unfortunately, this is not my household budget.
And this isn't your money either.
But this is a government budget here.
Yes, and it's our money.
We have, Sam, don't be cute.
I'm not being cute.
You and I are talking as accounting people right now. We have things in the capital budget that have a useful life of 5, 10 years, okay? And I'm suggesting to you that the appropriate way to pay for these items is with a bond.
And that's borrowing. And I'm saying that we have the opportunity, as Mr. Krug pointed out, to use funds to pay down debt. And I'm sorry, yes, that's how a household works. But at sometimes we're all households. All right. This is not your money to deal with. It's our money.
We are talking as accountants right now, okay? We are not talking, this is not a political forum, okay? You and I are talking as accountants. If you were to advise somebody under generally accepted accounting principles, okay, would you tell your business client to expense everything in year 1?
You're getting off topic here. Okay. You're getting off topic. This is a capital budget.
Would you?
Okay, so we're gonna, all right. So
All right.
let it continue. You have more questions?
Yes, I do.
For 16 minutes. There is no time limit.
I understand
But
that.
there are other people that do want to speak.
All right,
and
would
have
you like
raised
me
their
to come
hand.
back?
So I want you to be cognizant of
I
that.
understand that. Would you like me to come back? Because I have a list of about 14, 15 issues.
Oh,
I will be more than
absolutely.
happy to come back and
Hold
relinquish.
on. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak on the capital budget? Ms. Coyne,
I'll come back.
and you'll be the last speaker after Ms. Coyne.
Denise Coyne, 1062 Landing Road. I don't understand a whole lot about budgets, but I believe I heard recently that the state paid off a huge amount of debt. I think it's called defeasance or something. And I'm wondering if the state did that, they must have thought it was a good idea. And why wouldn't we also think it was a good idea? I mean, I heard that the state just paid down a huge amount of the debt.
I'm not familiar with it, but you would need money to pay off debt, so I'm not exactly sure where the source of the money came from with the state. I think the state, for the most part, has a lot more money than anybody. I don't know where you're referring to as far as where Gloucester Township would take that money to pay off debt.
No, but I'm thinking if we have a huge surplus every year, and I understand, that there's recommendations from the state as far as
what can be done with that surplus. But what Sam's saying, as far as borrowing money, and you have the ability to borrow money, but you don't have to borrow it all, why couldn't you use some of that money to pay down debt? I mean, it's a good thing to pay down debt, right? Makes sense?
On the surface, yeah. I don't know what the huge surplus you're referring
Yeah,
to.
there's no huge surplus.
I mean, typically, we finish with anywhere from $3 to $4 million. In the best of times, 4.5 million. Worst of times, 2.8, 2.9. So,
And that's used in the subsequent year's budget for the most
you know, on a $70 million budget, I don't consider that huge, but everything's relative.
All right, well, I'm just wondering if the state could pay off a huge amount of debt. I believe it had something to do with funds received from the federal government.
I wish I had the state's money problem.
Well, we got funds from the federal government for COVID also. So,
And that's what we're suggesting that we would like to use in this year's budget.
okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Sweet? Mr. Sweet, before you make your comments, and also counsel or Mr. Cardis, please try not to step over each other back and forth. Let the speaker ask the question and then respond and finish that question. And that's for anyone that comes to the microphone. I don't want this stepping over each other and back and forth. I'm sorry, Sam. Okay? Mr. Sweet?
All right, Sam Sweet from Ariel. How would council like me to go over these, like one at a time?
Yes.
Okay. 2021, the following, there's been 5 engineering designs that are appearing on the capital budget, and they're coming through now for construction and engineering inspection. I'm speaking with Chatwell. Those jobs, the engineering designs have been completed, they've been billed, and now it goes on to the next step. And he said that usually we have those plans, it takes about a year, and they bill the prior year because they can't get to all the construction. And there's 2 jobs on here, Kearsley Road and Cherrywood Phase 10, that it looks like we're doing construction. Well, we're doing the engineering design, and then we're doing construction on the engineering design, and then engineering inspection. How can we do construction? How can we come up with a cost? I know it's an estimate, and I probably answered that question, but how can we get a legitimate estimate when the engineering design hasn't been done yet?
Well, for Cherrywood Phase 10 that we're up to now, we have 10 prior phases to get our estimate fairly close. For the rest of the projects that you said, we're designed in prior years. The township identifies a handful of roads throughout the municipality every year for design in the current year, so that when we get to this point where we're looking at the bond this year, that we can authorize bids and go out to bid soon, so that we're not chasing. So that we find that the contractors, while they're building up their book of business in the winter, we get favorable bids, as opposed to trying to bid in the middle of summer or fall.
Okay, but again, you have a design for Kearsley Road, $42,000, and then you have $350,000 for construction, or is that Cherrywood? I'm sorry.
No, Kearsley's completed,
Okay, I'm
$42,000
sorry,
for
Cherrywood.
Cherrywood. Yep. And $6,600 for
So,
Monticello.
but you said that the other Cherrywoods, you have other jobs. Are they all cookie cutter jobs?
They're not cookie cutter, but we give estimates for every single project, whether we already, obviously if they're designed, they're very tight. We know what they're going to be. If we anticipate, like for Cherrywood Phase 10, we can look at prior years, and it's the next phase. We take 2 courts, a little piece of winding way, and we keep going all the way down.
Okay. If I may say something real quick, I'm not against this capital budget. I'm just looking for cost savings because of the simple fact that we do overborrow. We've been down that road. We also bond things, and we've been down this road that I don't think should be borrowed for. And so I'm not against the capital budget, but I think that it needs to be tightened up, especially in this day and age, and especially since we have money to pay down debt. Why would we extend our debt further when we have the opportunity not to extend it. We wouldn't, no, none of us would do that with our credit cards unless it was 0% interest, which we know that's not the case. So I just don't see why. So getting back to, we have a bunch of playgrounds. What are we putting on these playgrounds? I know it's like 180,000. There's a, what's being installed on those playgrounds that is costing 180,000, 175,000, 213 and 200,000. That's quick math is about $800,000 for 4 playgrounds. I can go to playgroundsandmore.com and get, they're having a 50% off sale right now. So what exactly are we doing? And traditionally, again, I'm going to go back to this. When I've looked at playgrounds that council has done in the past and approved, they've come in at over borrowing over a third of the cost. So have we tightened that up? Have we asked questions on that? On those playgrounds? 180,000, I don't know, seems like a lot.
Similar to what we've done in other neighborhoods. And I know that in the past you zeroed in on the Brittany Woods playground about our over borrowing and the cost that we have for that particular neighborhood. But these are consistent with what we've done in our previous neighborhoods in the last few years that you've been here and attending our meetings. So what's entailed with that, I can't give you the ins and outs of Mr. Carsky because he oversees the Public Works Department as well. But Tom, you could just off the top of your head some of the things that, and you can use Brittany Woods as an example. Some of the things that we've done for those particular
In this
neighborhoods.
particular instance, 2 of these playgrounds were applied for under Green Acres and they were rejected by a couple points. And so that's why they're in the capital budget. The other one was a rather large petition by the residents in Glendora for the 7th Avenue, 7th Street or
7th Avenue.
7th Avenue playground. And these are based on the actual costs for those structures. The books that we review are books that are approved under state contract or under co-ops. The cost of the playground structures themselves and the rubber surfacing, which we strongly believe that any playground that we're going to construct right now these days must have that rubber surfacing because it protects the children in case of a fall. That is about the same cost as the actual playgrounds themselves. So it's very easy for me to show you those costs. You look through the book yourself and you'll see the actual cost next to each one of the structures.
And the rubber that's going on these playgrounds for the protection of the children, is that to lower our liability as a township?
I'm sure it does, but the concern is that we want to make sure no kid is hurt.
Okay, I'm just asking.
You can't guarantee.
No, you can't guarantee that a kid's not going to get hurt, but I'm just asking does that lower our liability?
Maybe
by?
think about the history of what we've seen as bases in these playgrounds. It's basically been from rubber tire chopped up to wood mulch, and now they're using this substance, which we happen to have out here in Vet Park, and works very well, holds up well, and
I'm not debating that. I'm just asking, does it lower our liability as from an insurance standpoint?
I would have to check to see what it does, because off the top of my head, I don't know.
Okay. But again, so that leads me to my next question. We're installing a BMX track. Where are we installing that BMX track?
We haven't decided that yet.
Okay, and to me, a BMX track, since we're self-funded, self-insured, I believe this is the term you used.
We're funded through the JIF, Camden County JIF.
Okay, so wouldn't the BMX track though increase our liability? Why would we want to open ourselves up to that? I believe ATCO, and I believe there's another one in Brick Township that demolished their BMX track after a year because of all the lawsuits that were happening because people were getting hurt, severely hurt. So why would we want to open ourselves up to that?
I'm unaware of that.
But why would we want to open ourselves up to that?
Because we had a number of people come and request of the mayor to look into the BMX because apparently it's very popular right
I understand it's popular, but usually most BMX tracks, people are paying to go there and they're covered by their insurance. Whereas now we're opening ourselves up, and I just don't understand why council would even entertain that motion of, I'm not against BMX tracks, I'm against opening up the liability and the lawsuits on there.
Well, the
Certainly, Mr. Carlemere can speak to that.
The mayor and the administration have recommended to the council that this be included in the capital budget.
Does that open ourselves up to more liability issues, Mr. Carlemere?
I'm sorry, I was taking notes on something else.
If we create a BMX track, does that open the township up to liability for injuries that take place on the facility? Sam has indicated that, I guess that's bicycling and stuff. I mean,
It's like jumps, like motocross.
I guess you have to address the suitability of the field and location, and then who you're opening it up to. Anything you do of that kind of nature, you have to make sure your insurances are appropriately in place. You do have some liability because you're in charge of that field. And you're opening up and inviting. So it's depending on the controls that you put in place to govern the field.
So has council considered that when we're about to bond and borrow for a BMX track and the increased liability? Guess not. There's an indoor batting facility going in. Where's that going?
I believe it is earmarked for Ariel Little League.
Okay, there was no details behind it. I'm just asking where that is.
That was where the original request came from. I believe it's a gentleman named Paul. You might be familiar with him.
I'm familiar with Mr. Soltis, yes. But I was just asking because we were told that there wasn't going to be an indoor batting facility, that he couldn't do it for Ariel because he had to do it for all four. All four Little Leagues, Glendora, Blackwood, Gloucester Township, and then Ariel. So he couldn't do it for just Ariel. That's why I was asking that question.
I don't know who he spoke with.
He spoke with the mayor.
I wasn't there when the mayor said what you said the mayor said, or what Paul said the mayor said.
Okay.
I was this close to gabbling, Sam.
We're replacing copiers for $30,000. How many copies are we replacing?
I don't have the exact number. I may. I don't know. Let me see. I have some backup on that. If I don't, I can get that. I don't see the number of copiers, but I do see an apportionment of the 30,000 as 20,000 going in the police side and 10,000 going on the municipal administrative side.
And
I do see something here on the administrative side, legal department and court. And on police, I have chief, dispatch, the squad room, and the watch desk. So there is
6.
That would be a total of 6, yes.
So copiers, we're buying them $5,000. I'm assuming they're heavy duty copiers.
I would assume they are, yeah.
All right. So why would we consider leasing them instead of, again, borrowing? Because the lease is a fixed cost. We're not borrowing it. Leases are usually tend to be cheaper. And then especially with copiers, after 5 years in use, wear and tear, they tend to wear out. And then you need to upgrade anyway, especially if with the way computers are advancing. So would we ever consider?
I would say that's your opinion. I don't necessarily agree. We could debate whether leases are or aren't. You're charged per copy, as you know, under a lease.
No, I'm not.
And well, yeah, that's how it works.
No, I know how leases work, but there are other leases that are out there
Well,
that you're not charged per copy. And I know I have one of them.
I'm recommending to the council to purchase the copy machines.
Okay, was there a cost analysis done between leasing?
Recommending to the council to purchase.
I understand that you're recommending it, but was there a
not an analysis of lease compared to purchase?
Okay, so how are we voting on a budget here when there wasn't a cost analysis of whether or not it's better to lease as opposed to purchasing? I just don't understand why we're not, Mr. Hutchinson says that he doesn't want to raise taxes this year. And I understand that, I respect that. And then here's an opportunity to not borrow because, as I've stated several times, borrowing leads to higher debt service, which leads to higher taxes. So here's an opportunity not to do that, and yet we're not doing cost analysis for it.
Council, I don't recommend that you lease $30,000 in copiers. That's my position. I recommend you buy them. That's my recommendation.
Well, I understand that's your recommendation, but how can you make that recommendation without a cost analysis,
That's my
Mr. Cardis?
recommendation.
Okay, could you answer my question, though?
That's my recommendation.
I understand that. That's not answering my question.
Sam, I'm doing a little math. 66. There's roughly 94 items here or different projects listed. Do you think it would be a good use of the business administrator and CFO's time to do a cost analysis on all of those items?
Not all of the items, but certain items, yes, and a cost analysis of, yes.
Each of these 94 items. Because you could just say, why don't we talk about the health and fitness trail? If we do a cost analysis on that, number of runners or walkers.
We'll lease trucks.
I just asked because that's something you go to. You talk about a cost analysis, and I know a couple years ago with our weed whackers and whippers or whatever.
Which, by the way, I'm glad weed whackers are not on the capital budget this
Thank
year.
you very much for that.
All right.
So
Are we short on weed whackers? Or is Public Works got enough weed
I
whackers?
will guarantee you we get more than 5 years service out.
Well, last year you said that we didn't because they break down. Yes, you did. We can go to the tape, Mr. Cardis.
Let's not step over each other. Sam, what else do you have?
Repair them, Sam. Check.
Moving on.
Moving on.
How many 25-yard leaf machines do we need? Does the township need?
I don't know. You talk about in terms of the entire township, how many do we have? I don't have that.
We've borrowed or bonded or put on capital budget 4 in the last 5 years. Okay, so I'm asking how many do we need and what's happening to the other ones? If we need 4, that's fine. I have no problem with that. But if we need a 25-yard leaf machine is size of a football field or half of a football field. It's a pretty big leaf machine. I'm assuming that's the leaf machines that are cleaning up the streets. Okay?
I assure you it's not 25 yards in distance. It's 25 yards in capacity.
Okay, so.
That's all right.
All right, well, again, I'm just asking how many of those do we need to cover the township? If we need 4.
A lot.
Okay, well, what is a lot?
A lot. Could you make a note if you want to email me the question? I'll respond to you.
So Tom, when you put together the capital budget for Public Works, can you describe the process that you go through?
I base it on meetings with supervisors.
Who is that?
That would be Mr. Bucciaroni on the roads, Mr. Morris for Parks and Recreation, also both of them for the LEAP program. Roman Harrison is the supervisor for vehicles, and Bob Tyshak is the supervisor for buildings.
So collectively, you as part of the administration with the department heads and the people in this department put together what you need for the town. And that's what we're seeing right here.
Yes, I request their needs. And then from there, we meet with the mayor and we reduce those needs based on what is a higher priority.
And now council is being asked to approve this process, which narrows it down to what's in front of us right now.
This list was well in excess of $10 million when it started.
Thank you.
Sam,
That still doesn't answer, though, how many leaf machines does the township need? And council should be asking that question. If we had, whether it's leaf machines, whether it's weed whackers, whether it's telephones, whatever it is, 72-inch lawnmowers. We've now put 3 of those on. So, and why are we getting these lawnmowers and machines when we're contracting with Marksman? What exactly are we contracting with Marksman with that we need these machines? Is Marksman cleaning up or not cleaning up? So.
What's Marksman's contract? Is that the retention basin? Cutting?
But I also see them all over town on township property, either mulching, weeding, cutting grass and all that. So,
Landscaping, that's not.
okay,
actually
well,
leaves.
but isn't a 72-inch mower going to be landscaping as well?
I would say collecting leaves is when you see a dump truck pulling a leaf machine with a large hose and two men trying to control that hose and picking up all those leaves that are out there in November and December.
Understand that, but how many of those do we need? How many of those do we have?
Not
And-
enough, probably.
Okay, well, but probably isn't really an answer.
I didn't know you would come with that specific question.
But you're,
Of course you would. I understand.
Tom, how many weed whackers do we have in this town?
I'll have to count those.
Tom, why don't you have that information?
I'll have to count. I can count. I'll check tomorrow and get back to you.
and that answer will never come because I'm still waiting for the weed whackers. We have 30, by the way, Mr. Hutchinson, supposedly, all right, because we borrowed for 5 a year for 6 years. And again, I guess you don't know how many 72-inch lawnmowers, how many 72-inch
How are we
lawnmowers?
doing, Sam? We go pretty good out there or no?
But it's not a question, it's not a question
How is
of,
Public Works doing? They do pretty well with what they have?
they're doing an incredible job. It's not a question
I think
of,
they do a tremendous job. This is a very large town. This is a city. This isn't a town, it's a city. With 70,000 in population, 24 square miles. You know what it is.
Mr. Sweet, what else do you have?
yeah, I'm not, again, I'd like to go back to my first
You're
point.
not against the budget.
Okay, I'm not against the budget. I'm not saying that, I'm not saying public work, you can roll your eyes, Mr. Curtis, all you like. But I'm not saying I'm against it. I'm not saying we can't buy these 72-inch mowers. I'm asking, how many do we need?
Folks, let's stop stepping over each other. Continue, Mr.
I'm just
Sweet.
asking how much we need.
Mr. Sweet, we're trying to get through your list of items.
I understand, you're trying to get through the list to get over with, but I'm still not getting any answers on how many leaf machines the count needs. And if council doesn't know that, then we might be over borrowing. We might be borrowing for a leaf machine that we don't need. We might be buying weed whackers we don't need. So, this doesn't concern council at all. Like if we went down to Public Works, could I count?
Okay, you asked the question. When members of council and myself and the mayor's office, Mr. Carter, field questions in the months of September, October, November, December about their leaves and neighbors not having their leaves collected, that tells me perhaps maybe we do not have enough, and we do not have enough resources to pick up those leaves in those neighborhoods. So we'll find out a number for you. We're jotting down what you're asking for, and we'll provide that for you.
But you're about to vote on the budget
And I'm
tonight.
comfortable with
And
voting
if,
on that budget.
let's say you have,
I'm comfortable in voting what's in here. Okay, please continue.
we're borrowing for downtown Blackwood, 150,000, and then we're also purchasing land for 150,000. Aren't we getting a grant from the MPP or whatever that is of 125,000?
Yes, but
So-
there is some property there that may be of interest to the township.
So we're bonding that, we're borrowing that?
Possibly.
Well, not possibly,
Well,
it's
we
on,
haven't voted on it yet, sir.
well, we know this,
Don't roll your eyes, Sam. You know, we can't
Okay.
roll eyes here.
well, and I can
Please
point it out, and
continue.
that's fine, but we know we're all gonna vote yes. It's gonna be 7-0 on this capital budget.
You're an accountant. There's 5 of us here. Next. Go ahead.
Sorry, I missed the fact that some of you are missing. I know the answer to this one is going to be, it's not his recommendation, but, and this is more for the chief, and again, I'm not against it. Are we transitioning from regular police cars to Ford Explorers for all of our,
We've been doing that for quite some time. I would imagine, and I'll let the chief jump in as well. I go back to the Ed Smith years where Ed was not a fan of SUVs. And when Chief Earl, we started seeing some more SUVs come in, and that has continued with Chief Harkins.
Yeah, so we've had Explorers for many years. Crown Victoria was stopped. We chose to go with the SUV. They're all-wheel drive. In years past, when I first became deputy chief, we had to borrow construction vehicles when it snowed for patrol duties. So this year, we're just buying more. We've been getting Explorers for, I want to say back 2012, but don't approximately.
Yeah,
Yeah, but you know what, the important part of that, the thing that distinguishes them and enables us to put them in the capital budget is that they are pursuit rated, correct?
Correct, yeah.
What is,
Years ago, 4x4s were not pursuit rated.
Correct.
Meaning they did not have the power and the speed to be able to use it as a police
Safety,
car.
safety is the key. They're safer driven, plus the way the police patrol pursuit vehicle, the frame, when officers get into accidents, the safety features are a high level.
and how long do they last?
My God, we had this conversation today.
So
I've been buying them for almost 15 years. I have not seen one yet trickle down to where administration has one for their use, such as the assessor's office, any of the offices down. What's that?
Instruction.
Instruction does not have one either. I don't believe.
correct. That we're getting at least, I don't know, unless barring an accident or a severe mechanical failure, the average, I would say 8 to 10 years out of a police car rolling through it.
The assessor's office uses right now a 99 Crown Victoria. 99.
Which was a former police vehicle.
Not bad, huh?
Again, I'm not saying I'm against it, I'm just,
A compliment, though. I mean, maybe an
I'm
opposite.
sorry.
Can I add,
I'm sorry, I'm supposed to compliment them now because someone maintained a 99 Crown Victoria?
No,
I'm
just
sorry.
The fact that we got past 5 years. I thought maybe
Okay.
Chief,
so
positive.
just to add the difference of this year's Explorer request, we are attempting to get this batch to be hybrid vehicles to save on gasoline expenses, as you know, gasoline expenses. And but again, that's if we can get them. The supply issues always are the detail, but we have to plan. At the time, when we made this budget, we were looking to finance for that amount, whether they're available at the time that we need them. But that's a big difference in this attempt. We've explored them, we've looked at them. Other towns are using them, and we're working out the issues we would have to issue with our public works. So we're hopeful that will reduce our operating budget in gasoline costs. As you know, police cars are running 24/7. So that's our
I
goal.
just want to compliment Roman and the vehicle division because they do one heck of a job at maintaining our fleet and keeping these vehicles on the road.
Yeah, I would second that.
Mr. Sweet, please continue. Do you have any more?
Yes, I'm just gonna ask this question and I know with the answer already, but have we considered leasing these vehicles? Would they be cheaper to lease them? Would it cut down on repairs and maintenance on these vehicles? Because there are companies out there that lease vehicles to townships. I'm, again, not saying against the vehicles, I'm just asking for cost savings.
Yeah, there was a young councilman many years ago, and he brought that up, and the analysis was done, that it was best to go in purchasing them. That was something.
An analysis was done years ago?
Chief Smith had a meeting with us at a workshop, and he went and he educated us on what it was. I think Lee Lovell was on that council with us, and we all collectively decided to do what we're doing right now.
I'm sorry, could you speak up? I can't hear.
After the meeting with Chief Smith, we all collectively as a council decided to continue the process. But yes, we did look into this at that.
Now, don't take this the wrong way, Mr. Hutchinson, but he said a young councilman years ago. You're no longer young, like I'm no longer young.
I know all too well.
Okay, so don't mean any disrespect by that, but times change.
Yeah, absolutely.
Has it been looked into recently?
I can say that I haven't looked at it again. Okay. I mean, Chief, do you think anything's?
So that gets into the financing end, which I would for sure defer to Mr. Cardis. As a general, the training that I've gone through the New Jersey State Chiefs Association for the amount of use, the general rules is if you're getting more than 4 to 5 years of use out of the vehicle, the cost analysis, and I don't have a report, but the general consensus is that you're better off doing it the way that we're doing it as a cap, because you are getting way past the 5 years, which is our goal. And as an average, we've been achieving that by getting, again, our patrol cars last generally 2 to 3 years on patrol and get cycled down to detectives, support roles, so that we continue to get use out of the vehicles for long term.
Does that satisfy you, Sam, or do you want?
Yeah, no, that's fine. Again, I'm just looking, my last question, well, how many generators does Public Works need? Because, again, are these generators going to other buildings or are they going onto the Public Works building? Because now I count 3 in the last 4 years.
The generator is a phased-in project. We have not actually acquired the generator. If you look under section 8 of, subsection 8 of section F, public buildings,
Second page.
you will see that it's phase 2. I believe phase 1 was, don't quote me, 200,000.
I don't have the number from last year.
$150,000.
So it's one generator and being paid off in parts, like the,
No, we're building a fund to purchase it. We have not purchased it yet.
when will we be purchasing it?
I believe the intention is to purchase it next year. That will provide power for the entire building. Right now, they have emergency lighting only. Obviously, they want a powerful building.
So we're borrowing for 3 years. We're just creating this fund and we're borrowing again instead of budgeting for it in the,
And one lump sum.
well, no, I mean, just saying, like,
When will we actually borrow the money for the generator? We were authorizing it tonight, but when will we actually issue notes to purchase?
Well, I don't know when we're going to issue the notes at this point. I haven't even given it consideration, to be honest with you.
But we have the
Probably
ability.
as far as a permanent financing, we're looking at either next year or the year after that.
Is that it, Mr. Sweet?
no, I want to go back to,
Okay. You said you had one
well,
question.
was based on,
It just continues, but go ahead.
I'm sorry. These are questions that should be really being asked by you guys and looking at the budget. All right, because there's items here that I'm going to go back to overborrowing. We're overborrowing, and then we're going to cancel the debt, but then we're picking it up as income. That doesn't make any sense when we can pay off the note. All right, to Mr. Hutchinson's point, last year when you authorized the capital budget, when I stood up here talking about weed whackers and you authorized the capital budget, that year you ended up going out and taking a bond anticipatory note for the full amount. So when you say, when are they going to do it? He doesn't know the answer to when. It could be a month, it could be next week, it could be 2 months, it could be 3 months, but traditionally it's always been done in one lump sum. You could disagree, but traditionally it has been done in one lump sum. We asked last council meeting if we could do just-in-time borrowing, kind of like using it as a home equity line, where you have a home equity line of 200,000 and you draw down and you only pay back what you borrow. And you said that couldn't be done. But now here you're saying that, well, we don't know when we're going to take the note out for the power generator, but we're going to do this and that. So is that?
That's all I said. I said, I don't know when we're going to take the note out for this bond issuance. And you're right, it could be for the full amount. It probably will be. When, I don't know. I don't know if I'll do it, if we'll do this in a month. I don't know if we'll do this in a month and a half. I don't know if we'll do it in 2 months.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying.
All right, so let's assume we take this out in 2 months for the full amount, which has been done in the past, every year, traditionally. And then now we don't spend 2.2 million. Let's make that number up.
you in theory, since it's a note, can pay back that note to the bank.
You have to pay the entire amount of the note.
Pay it, but you just said if you're going to cancel the debt, you're going to pick it up as income.
No. What I said was you have to pay the entire note off. You take $100,000 note off, you gotta pay the whole thing off, just like if you borrow money. You gotta pay the entire amount. What I'm talking about is the difference between a 1-year note or 2-year note if you roll it over, and a permanent financing, which would be probably somewhere in the vicinity of 10 to 12 years.
Yes, but permanent financing we can't pay back because there's bonds. But if you overborrow and we don't spend the 8.2 million or the 8.8 million because we're borrowing 9.2, but you need 5% down, right?
You need 5% down to bond.
So if you borrow the 9.2 million and you don't spend it all by the end of the year, that money, if you're canceling the debt, like New Jersey said that you should, if you cancel the debt, then you're picking it up as income. Have I got that correct?
No, if you borrow $9 million
And you spend 7 million.
you use that figure, 9 million, and you borrow it for a 1-year period, you better be ready to pay back $9 million in 1 year.
I understand that, but if you borrow the 9 million, you spend 7 million, and then you go up, Mr. Chadwell goes, you know what, we came in under budget. We don't need $2 million for all these projects. And now you've got $2 million sitting there. All right. You said earlier that that $2 million is going to be picked up as revenue. Correct?
You still would have to pay the amount off.
Please answer my question.
No, because it doesn't make sense. You're gonna.
But that's what you said.
Where are you gonna come up with $7 million to pay off the note in 1 year? You're not.
You can't send in $2 million to pay down that note.
Where's the money come from if you don't permanently finance it?
You're not permanently financing in this scenario. Again, I'm asking in this scenario, Mr.
It
Cardis.
doesn't work.
Okay, what do you mean it doesn't work?
You cannot do $7 million in improvements with a 1-year note and pay it all off. Where's?
I'm not saying pay off the entire note. I'm saying if you have a $9 million
You
note,
still have to permanently.
okay, you still have to but you're permanently financing 7 million as opposed to permanently financing 9 million because you can take the 2 million and pay the debt down.
You still have
Okay.
to permanently do it.
But in my scenario, can you pay the debt down if it's in a bond anticipatory note with the extra 2 million?
Where are you getting the money? Where's the
You
money
didn't
from?
spend it. You borrowed $9 million. If you borrow $9 million, the bank writes you a check for $9 million or gives you access to $9
I
million.
have to pay them back.
Okay, you have to pay them back 9 million eventually. You spend 7,
1 year.
and then you can also extend it because we know we've extended those notes 3 years. We've had this conversation. So in my scenario, if you spend $7 million on capital projects, and Mr. Chatwell comes back and Remington Vernick says, we came in under budget, we don't need the $2 million that we called for. That $2 million can then turn around and be sent to the bank, the bond anticipatory note, and say, we still owe you $7 million. So when the time comes to permanently bond it, permanently finance it, we're only financing $7 million in this little scenario at whatever the bond rate is, 4%, because that's a heck of a lot cheaper than $9 million that we're going to have to pay back because we can take that money.
And I said that before. I said this allows you to borrow permanently finance up to an amount. You don't have to.
But you're not going to permanently finance this in this year. You're going to take a bond anticipatory note. And then we've proven that you have a surplus. So if there's a surplus, because you take that money, you said it earlier, you put it in as income. That money is income. If you could let me finish. You take that money as income. That is not gaining anything. There's no interest on that money. It's just being put into to balance the budget. Now you have a $9 million note. When you go to permanently finance that at 4% or 5% or whatever that is, that's significantly more money than $7 million at the same percentage rate. And over the course of, as you said, those bonds go to 8 to 12 years, not 18, 8 to 12, 8 to 12 years at 4% interest on $2 million. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money that we're wasting for this. So why aren't we paying down our bond anticipatory notes if there's a surplus?
You write this all down for me. Let me see how this works out.
You know damn well how it works, Mr. Cardis.
It doesn't work.
He does know how it works. I would just,
Thank you.
all right, I'm not done.
You're not done?
I'm not done.
So I'm going to say this, okay? We have no time limit when it comes to a second hearing for a reading on an ordinance. And you've done over 50 minutes here, and you're going to continue.
I have one last thing.
Okay, no, you told me that before.
This is honestly
That's fine.
one last thing,
Okay.
unless Mr. Cardis, says something to, that piques my curiosity again.
All right, go ahead.
All right,
You hardly people.
I can filibuster all night long, Mr. Mercado.
Well, then.
Okay, and it's an unlimited
No,
time.
no,
But
Sam,
regardless,
no, Sam,
what I want to say,
No, Sam, let me finish. Then perhaps we need to take a look at how we conduct our second reading of ordinances.
if you want to do that and
Because there-
go to
there
the
may
state
be-
with that,
You're cutting me off. Remember, I asked you, we're not stepping on each other.
Okay.
That perhaps there's people abusing this portion of second readings of the ordinance. And you said you're filibustering. I thought you were asking questions of us. You want to know a little bit more about the budget.
I am, but if
Suggesting
he's
to us,
going to,
You're stepping over me again.
if Mr. Cardis is going to make a snide comment, then I'm going to make one back.
Let's,
Okay,
We're not
so
gonna be
up
selfish
into
Please
this point,
continue. Ask your
up into
question.
this point, we've had a nice conversation. My last question or last item is
Your second to last question. Go ahead.
the simple fact of that there is items on this budget that council hasn't asked any questions on. They have not, you said not to step over me. Okay, so I would make the suggestion that we could possibly look at this, hold off, and use some of the financing, or not financing, some of the income from the COVID to reduce our debt, because debt ends up costing the taxpayers money. And it's really easy for you guys to sit there and spend other people's money, but not our money. And I think that this budget needs to be looked at and tightened up and should be basically not voted on tonight.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now we'll close the hearing on this ordinance. I entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion.
Is there a second? On the question? Roll call, please.
Mr. Hutchison,
Yes.
Ms. Grace.
Yes.
Mr. Mignon,
Yes.
Mrs. Winters, Mr. Mercado.
Yes. On our consent agenda, there was two resolutions, 79 and 80, that Mr. Hutchinson had made a motion. There was a second by Ms. Grace to have amended. So we're going to make language on it. So we're going to make, should we have a motion to amend the consent agenda?
Or you can make a motion to amend 79 and 81 as indicated. When that passes, then move the whole consent.
Okay. So we have a motion to amend on 79 and 80, and we had a second by Ms. Grace. On the question, roll call, please.
Yes.
Mr. Hutchison,
Yes, I'm sorry.
Ms. Grace,
That's just for this
These two are being amended.
section. Okay, yes.
Mr. Mignon.
Yes.
Mrs. Winters. Mr. Mercado.
No. So that passes 4-1. We have the consent agenda. I entertain a motion to accept the consent agenda as amended.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
On the question, roll call, please.
Mr. Hutchison,
Yes.
Ms. Grace,
Yes.
Mr. Mignon,
Yes.
Mrs. Winters, Mr. Mercado.
Yes.
Resolution 220381, a resolution of support for the application of Blackwood Wellness LLC to open a Class 5 adult use cannabis retail business located at 816 North Black Horse Pike in the township of Gloucester.
I entertain a motion.
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second? Thank you. On the question, roll call, please.
Mr. Hutchison,
Yes.
Ms. Grace,
Yes.
Mr. Mignon,
Yes.
Mrs. Winters, Mr. Mercado.
Yes.
Resolution 22:03-082, resolution of support for the application of Unity Road SNJ LLC to open a Class 5 adult use retail business located at 2751 Sicklerville Road in the township of Gloucester.
May I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
On the question, roll call, please.
Mr. Hutchison,
Yes.
Ms. Grace,
Yes.
Mr. Mignon,
Yes.
Mrs. Winter, Mr. Mercado.
Yes.
Resolution R 22-03-083, a resolution of support for the application of Royal Highness Dispensary LLC to open a Class 5 adult use cannabis retail business located at 543 Berlin Cross Keys Road in the Township of Gloucester.
May I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
On the question, roll call, please.
Mr. Hutchison,
Yes.
Ms. Grace,
Yes.
Mr. Mignon,
Yes.
Mrs. Winters, Mr. Mercado.
Yes. We have one GT eGov access email from Peter Heimball, Morningstar Court. GT is receiving $6.8 million of 2021 and 2022 from the Federal American Rescue Plan grant. How will these grant funds be reported in the 2022 GT budget? Does GT have a written spending plan for these funds? The budget is still being worked on. That has not been submitted to council by the administration. So at this time, we don't know how that fund is going to be used. There is, from what I understand, and Tom, correct me if I'm wrong, there is no spending plan for this grant funds, and no spending plan is required. Correct. Okay. With that, we'll open up the second public portion. This public portion is for 30 minutes. Each speaker is entitled to 5 minutes, and I will keep that strictly to 5 minutes during this second public portion. Mr. Krug.
Evening, Council. Paul Krug, Blackwood Estates. In the last several weeks, I've had the pleasure of reading some of American Polish Nobel laureate poet Czesław Miłosz. Maybe you've read about him or read some of his work. He speaks a lot about conformity, the pleasure it provides, the lightness of heart and mind that it gives, how it solves so many personal and professional dilemmas. And he suggests that principled dissent is what is rare. And I think we saw that it's rare this evening. Capital budget vote went exactly as expected, although we had a very unique opportunity this evening to change the way things are done and to significantly impact Gloucester Township citizens and their bottom line. Instead, we decided to conform, as we typically do, and continue along the same path that we've been following. We've talked about the significant increase in municipal budget in 2001 being $15 million, in 2021 being $65 million, over 300% increase, 4.33x multiple. I've heard very little in the way of how we're going to solve this up and to the right parabolic movement in the budget. I stood here and I suggested a way. I guess it fell on deaf ears. Mr. Cardis suggested that individuals came to the mayor, maybe this council, and wanted a BMX park, which is going to add liability, as I understand it from Sam's line of questioning. How do people get their suggestions accepted? How do they get them voted on? Been here for 3 years, coming with what I think are reasonable suggestions as to how to improve the financial standing of the township. And I don't see anything done about it. So how do I work with you to see an improvement to this situation, which I've been bringing up for 3 years?
Anyone want to respond to that?
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Polidoro.
Good evening again, Council. Ray Polidor from Ariel. How much did the township budget for snow removal this year?
Right off the top of my head, I'm not sure.
Would it be safe to assume that we probably did not use,
I don't have that document with me.
we probably didn't use at least a third of that? Will that carry forward to next year? Or will you budget again for snow removal and put that into the general fund and spend that on something else?
No, we won't reserve it. It will either lapse to, it'll go into a reserve account, in the event that we did have a storm in December, and then it will lapse the fund balance at the end of the following year.
Generally, in a household budget, if you assess money or earmark it for something and you don't need it, you save it for that rainy day. Is there any way that you can set aside that money for snow removal? Because as we talked about for years, you would put the snow removal funds into the budget, and for each of the years that we had more snow than not, once it went into the budget, it stayed in the budget. And if I remember correctly, you added for 2 big snowstorms, and each time big snowstorms came along, and I said it somewhat sarcastically, but it was factual. Gloucester Township is still prepared for 10 big snowstorms because you keep adding snowstorms into the budget and never taking them away. With that fund that you're not using this year, because there just hasn't been much snow.
There is no snow fund.
Maybe it's
There's
something.
a budget, and that budget runs its cycle. Again, at the end of the year, there's what's called a reserve period, and that really is the entire following year. Most of it is expended in the months of January, February, March. Most of it is your utility bills, bills like that. And by the time you get to year end, whatever is left, if there's money left over, lapses to fund balance.
Because next year, if we have 2, 3, 4 storms, you'll add more snowstorms onto the budget, and it'll continue to grow, and you'll just keep absorbing in the
We'll
general
budget for
fund.
what we believe our needs are.
It just seems
We'll budget for what we believe our
redundant.
needs are.
All right. Just to reiterate what Paul was talking about, and we brought this up before, we have yet to ever see the separation of powers where our legislative branch takes it upon himself to be independent of what the administration does. They send it to you and you just rubber stamp it. And there are times when, those of us that are here all the time and people that are here brand new, it looks very arrogant. It just looks arrogant where people are coming with good ideas. You had citizens in this township submit a budget. We paid no attention to it. I don't even think most of us read it. And in all honesty, I don't know that any of us would understand it the way that it was put together. I just don't see that happening.
Thank you for those kind words.
It's just my opinion.
Yeah,
It's just my opinion.
it stinks, but go ahead.
Okay. Mr. Cardis mentioned the generator for the Public Works. In a really less than fanfare method, the Public Works, I guess we'd call that the vehicle port. Are there not solar panels on that port on the left-hand side of the Public Works building?
Yes.
I don't ever remember that coming before council and seeing or hearing of an approval. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I believe that was part of the PPA that was conducted, the $25 million PPA that was conducted several years ago when the schools received solar. Anybody?
It was a while after that. The schools had already been long done, and all of a sudden it seemed that popped up.
I don't believe so.
So we're allowing them to lease that vehicle port, and there's energy being produced there, and yet we can't utilize that as a backup for, instead of getting a generator, we couldn't utilize that energy being produced.
I'm not an energy expert, but I believe what's necessary is more than what is on those ports.
Okay. All right. Have a good night. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Smithman.
Good evening. My name is Shaughnessy Smithman. I live in Millbridge Gardens Apartments, Millbrook Court, apartment 341. Budgets are something that I was never quite good at, ever. Guesstimation skills were not my thing. I've always been a little behind when it comes to sophistication, such as things like a city council meeting. So my apologies if I'm less than educated when it comes to things like this. But I did have a child when I was 16. It was just becoming pretty popular, not to be in fashion, but it was something that was occurring, and I went to Williamstown High School in Monroe Township. The focus can be pretty hard. Yet you work real hard. It would take about till my age now, I'm fortunate to make it this far in life, to be able to come back to the council and explain to you. Not everyone is fortunate to stand up here and speak to a city council in any form, especially if their health has failed or their circumstances were not ideal. In my exposure to different situations, things that I've heard, read about or heard from other people's conversations, there have been stillborn children that people don't know what to do with. They're a part of the community like everyone else. Maybe not the stillborn child, but the person that carried it and the person that fathered it and the people that it affects within the community. There really is nothing set out for that. It's as important as a budget. It's life itself. Like you have over borrowing and things left over and debt behind, and all these words have purpose. Same thing when it comes to making life. Not all life makes it, but you need to find a way to civilly engineer the minds of the community to know what to do in these situations, because it's as traumatic or equal to, if not worse, than overspending or having debt. You have a situation where a stillborn child is presented. This is just one of many circumstances that could happen. You have to know what to do with it. You're suggesting to call someone else. Well, it's one nation under God. Church is a part of it, of course, but this is where I think the thought process begins. There's only so many places where you can hand it over to. I'm sure that there's many court cases. I can tell you from my own personal experience in construction, I've heard different possible solutions. One town put in a blender on the intake of their sewage treatment plant, where the municipal sewage comes in. They just put in a blender of sorts, very large blender, but that way there's nothing identifiable on the other side. They grind it all, everything that comes in on the intake. If you can get it down the drain, you're good. That's what they did. I'm asking for the township, for the council, to put a little bit more thought into it than that. We're much more than machines. We're people. We can figure out what to do. You're asking for a person, a police officer, or a fireman to respond to a situation, but ultimately you have to know what to do with it. If someone calls for a non-emergency and has a stillborn child, it could be of any age of gestation, if it has an appearance or non-appearance, and if you won't think about this topic, I know it's difficult, but it needs thought. From what I understand, the church says life begins at conception. Well, then a woman might call the police when she menstruates every time, just to be sure that they're not breaking the law or offending God. Because we're people. We care that much. But we need to start thinking about it. And I will bring it up as often as I can, in as many different ways as I can, to try to communicate it to the council. I apologize if you don't understand my words when I ask for things such as a question of where would one locate the town water. Well, Mr. Mercado, when you didn't understand what I said, I rephrased it. They're also referred to as watering holes. or at least they used to be. My apologies, I was not requesting a watering hole. I had a well and a septic tank. The only connection to the municipality that we had was the storm drain.
Ms. Smithman, I'm sorry, your time is up. You can come back up if we have more time left in the public portion.
Good evening.
Ms. Coyne?
Denise Coyne, 1062 Laney Road. I just want to ask, according to the township charter, is there ever a time, I understand that the mayor appoints people, but normally, according to the township charter, does he consult with council for those appointments or no?
It's on the advice and consent of council. So at the appointments for professionals, or are you talking about employees of the township?
Anyone he appoints?
So appointments with directors, it's advice of council, advice and consent. With professionals, the same thing.
So when you say advice and consent, does he meet with council and
No.
says, I would like to appoint somebody, this is his qualifications, and council votes yes or no? Like, how does that work?
There is a memo that's sent to council. And that memo we have before our council meeting. If we have any questions for the mayor, we can contact the mayor, but that's our interaction with that.
So what information does he give council? Does he give you like the resume to review, or does he just say, I'd like to appoint this person? Like, what information do you get?
Well, if it's let's say a director, that resume is provided to us. If it's a professional, it goes through a process, RFQ process, open bid.
Sometimes it's like myself or Mr. Cardis request to go over those RFQs or.
Sorry, I can't hear you.
Sometimes Mr. Cardis and myself go over RFPs and RFQs that are submitted in. Sometimes there's three of us. That's people that are responding to those professional appointments. And if they're outlining the information is then processed out for those.
When I first got on council, Denise, I was kind of shocked. I thought that I would be consulted with respect to those types of things, but that's not the way it works. That's not the way it's.
So that's based on our township charter, correct?
There's a separation of the executive branch and legislative branch for this one.
So other townships don't do the same thing.
That is correct.
Okay, so for example, a planning board member, if they're appointed, does council review that planning board appointment or no?
Appointments are mayors and mayor's appointment.
So he could choose anybody and council has no say?
It's advice and consent. No, advice, no. It's his appointment. I'm sorry.
Planning board is mayor's appointment. Zoning board is
It's
council.
council, zoning board's council.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Sweet?
Sam Street from Ariel. Couple of meetings back, I had asked the penalty for violating the non-fair contracts. There on this bill pay that just was voted on, Billowas Concrete is being paid. It says for work January 29th of this year, they violated the non-fair contract because they donated, so they shouldn't be allowed to do business with the township. That was the penalty you said for 1 year.
1 year.
So when does that year start? Shouldn't it start January 1 to December 31?
I haven't seen any information on that. If you, these no bid contracts, we're usually under 17,500 according to the law. A lot of those bids that go out or that contracts that are awarded are not anticipated to reach 17.
Could you speak up a little, please?
Most of those are just estimated of what the contract's going to be. Sometimes the work increases during the course, and it might go over the 17.5. If it goes over the 17.5 and that individual has made a contribution, either 300 or 500 the previous year, they can be barred from receiving a no bid contract in the next year.
Okay, but I thought also was they couldn't do business with the township.
Well, if they can bid and receive a bid award.
A bid award, one, but if it's if this isn't a bid,
It's a no bid award, and it's to be under 17.5. If they made contributions over the limit amount, then they cannot get a no bid award for 1 year.
okay, so what if are they precluded from doing business with the township though?
Well, they're not precluded because they can participate in a bid process.
But they can't participate in a no bid process. So if job is for a no bid process, who do we bring that up to? Do we contact you if there's a violation?
Contact anyone. You contact the business administrator, myself, council president, or the mayor's office.
Sam, if you think that there's an issue with that, please bring it to the attention of Mr. Cardis.
I think there's potentially an issue with Billabong Concrete.
Can we look into that? I don't want-
They donated, they did a political donation. There's a bill pay. I don't know.
I believe bylaws.
I might be mispronouncing the name.
And that would be, you're saying payment for this calendar year?
Yes, January 29th. It was on this bill pay, but it said, the note said January 29th.
Sam saying that there was a political contribution made, which may
Dave, I'll
make
pull,
them not eligible.
I'll pull out everything that they've been paid for 22. 21 is not an issue, correct?
21 is not an issue, no, it's 22.
22, and then I'll get that to you, and then we can.
And I believe, without checking, the law reads that if they return the contribution, then they're eligible.
Can we get clarification on that, please? All right, earlier on the cannabis, you said that this supporting the cannabis, and then they have to go adhere to that, whatever the land says, the land use, correct? So can they apply for a variance?
They have a right to apply for variance.
And that variance goes in front of the zoning board or the planning board?
The zoning board, my sense is that this is a new ordinance that specifically has been adopted. We had our courses with the state of New Jersey, the comments were, they can't see the zoning board going against the ordinance that was established. But the ordinance established certain site-specific limitations or restrictions. Anybody coming in, as far as a resolution of support, we can't discriminate and say, no, we don't want that, or whatever, because it's zoning, it is a zoning permit in that zone. So we give out our resolutions of support, but if they are granted a license in the state of New Jersey and they have a location they want to move into, they have to meet site-specific requirements. That's in our resolution of support.
But they can apply for a zoning, and
They can
obviously,
apply for
zoning variance.
I would be surprised if it's.
Okay.
This is legislative body, but I would be surprised if the zoning board would grant a variance.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Yes, sir. Can you have your name and address, please?
Amal Coley, Cobblestone Farms or Gravel Circle. I just wanted to say that being a citizen in the community and being a business owner, having various businesses in the town since 2015, I find Gloucester Township to be very supportive of the business community, and it provides for investment opportunities and future-looking benefits that come from the town. And I just wanted to thank you all for that opportunity, and we appreciate the support.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else? Seeing none, we'll close the public portion. Polling the directors?
Mr. Carlemere?
Nothing to report.
Mr. Cardis?
Just want to pray for the people in Ukraine.
Chief Harkins?
So I want to inform council, we released the information last week, but we're pleased that we were certified by Georgetown Law School, Georgetown Law Center as what's called an ABLE Project Certified Police Department. And ABLE stands for Active Bystandership for Law Enforcement. And that we needed to solicit support from different community groups. We utilized the DOT organization that we work very close with, the Ministerium, Our Lady of Hope Parish, other community groups had to write letters of support for us, but also it included officers attending at least 8 hours of training mandate. We completed that training And it's a nice thing for us to have accomplished this certification. And basically what it is for officers, giving officers the training and the tools to intervene, to stop other officers from making a mistake or losing their temper, losing their cool. Much in the same way that airline pilots are encouraged to report issues, healthcare officials, doctors, nurses, when they see a problem, having a reporting system, but also how to intervene. And it was received very highly by all the officers. It was legitimate training that helped us get that, and we're very proud to have achieved that ABLE certification. So I just wanted to let council know that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Mr. Chavo?
Yeah, I'm usually pretty quiet, but I just want to touch on, Sam, the estimates are becoming increasingly difficult to hone in on in this environment with inflation and timber going up 300% in a year and coming back down. And now you see oil, which is asphalt, which I honestly lose sleep at night thinking about all my various municipalities and worrying about bids coming in high or low. It feels like a lose-lose. Either they come in over budget and the township has to find the money somewhere, or God forbid, bond more, or they come in under budget, which is a good thing for me, but then there's money left over and you guys think the town's not spending it wisely or over borrowing. So it's just difficult.
Thank you, Mr. Chadwell.
Mr. Hutchison?
There was a lot of good dialogue tonight, a lot of give and take. I try to answer every question that comes my way, even if some people are never going to like it. Ray, the first time I think you changed my mind. And I thought that was good government. I thought disagree with Mr. Mercado, but that's not the first time either. But thank you very much for coming. Thank you for giving me your insights. And although I didn't speak on every issue, some things were brought up today that I will look into. Thank you for coming.
Ms. Grace?
I want to thank everyone for coming out tonight and all of the conversations. Just listening to a lot of comments. I may have a few questions, but overall, thank you all for coming out, and have a safe night and 11 days tomorrow.
Mr. Mignon?
Thank you all for coming out. Just want to let everyone know that we will have the GT Field of Dreams this season. Opening day will be April 23rd. So if you know somebody with special needs, they could live in the township or not live in the township, we're welcome to everyone. Have them sign up at the Gloucester Township Rec Center, 80 Broad Acres, and we're going to play ball this year. Thank you. Have a great week and a happy St. Patrick's Day all.
You do a good job.
Thank you.
Mrs. Winters?
Thank everyone for coming out. Have a great week.
Mr. Mercado?
Thank you for coming out, everyone. Thank you for your comments. I entertain a motion to adjourn. Second? Second. All those in favor? Aye. Have a great evening.
They played well.